Blake Griffin and Andre Drummond. So there's been a lot of speculation about these two getting traded. They've actually been sat down by their teams. They're being benched until they work out a trade or a buyout, which is strange in Blake Griffin's case because the buyout would have to be like 70 million plus dollars. I'm not sure if the owner would like really agree to a buyout on Blake Griffin's massive deal. It's kind of ridiculous. And Andre Drummond, it makes more sense for why he would be bought out. But his value in general, just from what I've heard, is like a couple of second rounders. That's kind of where his value is at. A lot of people kind of overvalue him. He's, in my opinion, he's kind of one of those centers that they put up great numbers, but he doesn't have a tremendous impact on the game, if that makes sense. If you watch the game, a lot of times he does kind of ball hog, and he just, half his rebounds are from his own misses. Let's be real. So, his numbers look a lot better than what he is putting out on the court, and that's why his value is so low. Other teams are seeing it too. Obviously, it's why otherwise his value would be way higher with the numbers he's putting up. There's been some teams that have been interested, and those teams are the Nets, Lakers, Celtics, Raptors, Hornets, and Blazers. This is just for Drummond. What do you think with Drummond? Do you think he's going to end up on one of these teams? Is he going to be bought out? Is he going to be traded? What team do you think he'd fit best on? All that.
So it comes to Andre Drummond. I think the best. Well, I did you say the Celtics as well or no? For the
Yeah,
yeah,
Nets,
okay,
Lakers, Celtics, Raptors, Hornets, and Blazers.
okay. Well, out of those teams, I think the best one would probably be the Nets. Now I know I feel like that's kind of cliche, and I feel like everyone's probably said that. Um, for honorable mention, I wouldn't just mention just the Celtics. I think that's another team that would definitely benefit because they do need a big. Um, you know, with the Celtics, I think they're in the bottom half of the league in rebounding and blocks. So, and like you said, I know Drummond doesn't put up the most. I mean, he puts up more glamorous stats than he actually, plays. But he does average about a block or so. So they could definitely use that regardless. The Celtics just need, size in general. But back to my main point, Nets were the best pick for me because how I see it, DeAndre Jordan is just not as effective as he used to be back in the day when he was with the Clippers and even with the Mavericks. Yes, I do agree that Drummond's play style is outdated and he does lack a jumper, which is pretty pivotal in today's game. And sometimes what I'm seeing from the Cavs, and I think even with the Pistons, sometimes there's times where he has the ball in his hands for too long. However, when it comes to the Nets, between Harden, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, I won't really see the ball in his hands unless he's getting a rebound or making certain other plays. The team can still use not perimeter, excuse me, can still use post defense. After they got rid of Jared Allen, they definitely could still use that. They haven't really filled that void since then. He's a decent defender, above average. I know he averages around 1.6 steals per game and 1.2 blocks per game. And he has, I think, above average defensive rating and above average defensive box plus minus in the league. So, he's not the greatest defender. He's not the greatest rebounder. He's not the greatest center, but he's good. He's decent. And that's all the team really needs. They just need a decent post defender. They need a decent, rebounder. They just need enough because offensively, like we see the Nets, they're like, I think they were at one point the number one offensive rating team in the NBA. But they on the flip side, they were the lowest, if not the lowest, defensive rating in the NBA. So, I feel like with Drummond there, he can help improve their defensive rating without really hurting their offensive rating. Because I feel like I said, between Kyrie, Harden, Durant, he won't really be seeing the ball in his hands, and he wouldn't have be in a situation where he is ball handling as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. The Nets are a great place for him as well as the Celtics. The only thing is that the Lakers and the Nets, I don't think they can really afford him unless he gets bought out. So that's what they're kind of hoping for. The Celtics have a big trade exception they can use, but because they're like at the hard cap, they need to also give away like Tristan Thompson or just straight up $9 million worth of money in players to actually acquire uh, Andre Drummond. So if they actually wanted to use the full exception, which they need to, because Andre Drummond's contract is pretty massive, they need to let go of a couple players, probably Tristan Thompson and probably somebody else, which be kind of funny to give Tristan Thompson right back to the Cavs right after he just signed with the Celtics. But look, that's why you don't sign with the Celtics. Look, because they're gonna trade you. All right, like
Yeah.
if you sign with the Celtics, you got to know full well like the second a good deal comes up, they will not pass up. You will be gone. They'll like that's it. Uh, so I would feel bad for Tristan Thompson, but at the same time, he's asking for it by signing with the Celtics. Um, the Raptors, I could kind of see what they're going for. Andre Drummond, I don't want to take away from his post defense. His post defense is incredible. He's a very, very solid post defender. He's a very good rim protector. But his, if a small ball five kind of gets switched on to him, he does struggle a bit going out to the perimeter and all that, getting dragged out there. And his offense just isn't the greatest in general either. So, for the Raptors, they're looking for that defensive center just to kind of plant them and steady them. That's kind of how the Raptors go. That's how they've been these past couple of years. They've had a good defensive center in either Marc Gasol or Serge Ibaka. That's kind of anchored their team, so the rest of the team can play more effective defense. So I can kind of see why he goes there. I'm not exactly sure on the logistics of the trade there, but I think it could happen. The Hornets, I'm kind of baffled by why the Hornets are really interested in him. They should kind of be looking to build more on LaMelo. I don't know if they should be looking to compete right now. If they wanted to, if MJ really wanted to, sure, I guess you could pick up Drummond, but that's whatever. The Blazers looking for every type of center possible. Nurkic got injured, and I've said from the moment that it happened that they should not have let Hassan Whiteside go. He was the only one playing any type of defense on Anthony Davis on the Lakers. So if they wanted to be successful and keep moving, they'd have to keep Whiteside. Now Whiteside went and signed for like a minimum with the Kings. Um, so here's also my thing with just all these teams that are interested in Andre Drummond. You could get a very similar thing for much less money. And by that, I mean if you trade for maybe Hassan Whiteside or JaVale McGee. They're also very good rim protectors. They're also pretty solid. Just in general, their offense isn't the greatest, but they're both good rim protectors. That's kind of what Drummond is, but Drummond is like $30 million. He's making $30 million as opposed to those guys who are basically on minimums at this point. So, if I'm one of those teams, I would kind of look at it as like why am I dealing this out for Drummond, who's probably going to leave in a year, probably going to leave right after this is done, and who also is kind of looking to pad his stats a little bit because he wants a big extension in this offseason. Why would I really target him when I could look at a JaVale McGee or a Hassan Whiteside? I'm just not sure exactly if he really will get traded. That's kind of the main thing holding his value back is that his deal expires this season, after the season's done. So, he could very well leave you. That's another reason his value is not very high. So, on Drummond, that's kind of what I think about Andre Drummond. I think he probably will get bought out, but I wouldn't be surprised if a team was like, I want to make sure we have him this season and let us have a chance to re-sign him with bird rights in the next season and maybe throw a second rounder in there and try to snag him up. The Celtics never make any moves. So
They need
sorry.
to.
Yeah, sorry, Celtics fans, but Danny Ainge hasn't really made many great moves for a while. Uh, Even though they had so many assets and they wasted a lot of them, but that's a completely different discussion. But yeah, I mean the Celtics, they should be the ones to do it in my opinion, but they probably will not. That's my guess. They probably will think that they could get him in the offseason or sorry, in the free agent market once he's bought out. But it's the Celtics just they could have traded for Miles Turner, but they for some reason they want to win every trade completely. They don't want to have a win-win trade. They could have traded Hayward for Miles Turner, which they wouldn't have even needed to solve this problem. Miles Turner is one of the best defensive centers in the league right now. He's averaging, I believe, like 3 blocks a game. That's pretty ridiculous. That's kind of exactly what the Celtics need. And Danny Ainge didn't pull the trigger on that for whatever reason. And it's really cost the team a lot so far going through the season. But yeah, if they did do the Andre Drummond move, it would definitely be like a desperation, like we need to use a trade exception kind of a move. But I can't see them doing it.
Yeah, I think also the Celtics had a chance to trade for Drew Holiday and trade Kimba, but they some weird things didn't get ironed out. So, they had an opportunity to really add defense this year. It sounds like because Drew Holiday or Miles Turner, both of them are good defensive players. So they did have an opportunity to elevate their team, but I just feel like Danny Ainge was too afraid. And I think he's made a report saying, I think it was a recent report saying that he said if there's someone to blame for the Celtics not being good right now, it's Danny Ainge. He said that himself. So I'm glad he's at least taking some accountability, but that's nice. But instead of telling us it's your fault, make a difference. You know what I'm saying? Like you're the GM, do something about it. Don't tell us it's your fault. We know it's your fault. You're the one at the helm. Make a difference.
Yeah, I completely agree. And just touching on Blake Griffin, I don't think he's going to be traded at all. I've heard nothing about any team really even being interested in Blake Griffin.
I've heard one, but I don't think they'll do it because of. I don't think they'll trade for him, but they'll do it if it's a contract buyout. I heard, and that's the Lakers.
Yeah, but the Lakers are looking for everybody. Which is why they're looking so good right now is because they're never satisfied with the roster. They're always trying to improve it. But here's the thing about Blake Griffin, right? He's making, I believe, $36 million this season, and his stats are horrendous. Just genuinely, they're horrendous. He's averaging 12 points,
Career
five
low.
rebounds,
Career low.
4 assists.
I think that's I'm not sure if it's a career low, but it
It's a
might
little
be
higher than what he usually does, actually. But field goal
really.
percentage is 36.5%. 3-point percentage is 31.5%. Free throw percentage 71, and all that. He is having a terrible season, straight up. And of course, he doesn't really play much defense. He's lost a lot of his athleticism. The injuries have kind of taken their toll on him, sadly. It's sad to see. I loved watching Blake Griffin when he was on the last year with the Clippers because he was hailing the ball. He was dishing out assists. He was fun to watch, very fun to watch. Even his first year in Detroit was fun to watch. But, the injuries have really been catching up to him, and he just doesn't have that same bounce anymore. He hasn't dunked since, I believe, December of 2019. I believe that's he is, I hate to say this, but he's kind of washed right now. That's what it seems like. And so I don't see a team taking on $36 million this year and $38 million next year because he's on a player option. But he's going to accept the player option. He's not making $38 million from anybody else, even over the stretch of like a few years if he gets a big contract. But no, he is going to take that player option. So you're going to have to deal with $36 million tied up to one player, which is like 30% of the cap, and then also $38 million the next year. So it's not even an expiring deal. If they buy him out, that would be ridiculous because the owner would have to pay like $70 million. If they really don't want him on the roster that bad, I don't know, man. Would any team even want him on the roster if the Pistons don't even want him? That's kind of it's strange, man. It's strange. I'm not too confident about Blake Griffin being traded at all.
Yeah, I don't see him being traded. I think his contract. I know we were talking about in the NFL that no contract's untradeable, but in different sport, and Blake Griffin is playing on career lows on a big contract. I do see this as an untradeable contract because he's not producing. I mean, my thing is like if they do a buyout, which could be possible. I'm not going to rule it out completely. Like I said, the Lakers would make sense for him to go there. Their front court can definitely use some depth. With Montrezl Harrell, they have an old Marc Gasol and then Markieff Morris, who averages only 15 minutes off the bench. With AD typically being hurt throughout most of the season, not most of the season, but typically being hurt most seasons. This is just a depth signing. That's what it all would be for the Lakers, a depth signing. So, because they're not going to expect him to be the guy he was when he was a Clipper, or even when he first started out with the Pistons. They just need him another body, another big body in the front court, and that's what the Lakers would use him as. But that's if and only if a contract buyout does happen. But like you said, and mentioned multiple times, if a contract as big as his, I think Blake Griffin's probably just get some rest. Probably going to try to start playing him after the All Star weekend or after the trade deadline. But I don't see him sitting out the whole season or sitting out too much longer because they're probably going to end up realizing like, hey, this contract's too big and no one wants to pay that much money for someone playing that poorly. So I mean, they got to figure it out. Whatever the situation is, they got to figure it out with the Pistons because that's a hard contract to make a good deal for.